Saints fans and Who-Dats from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz. With your host, Bob Rose.
Good evening, New Orleans Saints fans, NFL fans, fans of the Bayou Blitz. We thank you for having us back into your homes on our regular Wednesday night spot. We treasure you as always. Joining us as always, tonight he's going to be a dual threat, is my partner in crime, my Alvin Kamara, Mr. Kyle Mosley. How are you tonight, sir?
Only if I can run that ball as gracefully as he, I'll be okay. I don't know if these old bones can do that, but I am here. How are you doing, man?
Oh, I'm good. I'm pretty good. Most of us, I think, are riding a high. Most of us fans of the New Orleans Saints. Football season is now officially back with the first game action. And our Saints, as most of our listeners know, our Saints came away victorious with a late comeback victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars last Thursday. They came out of it injury-free and with a couple good-looking players coming out of there. It's got to be excited moving forward. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty exciting stuff, man, to watch the game, but also it was exciting to be home in New Orleans this past week, especially this weekend, spending time with the family, me, my son. We had our bros trip. So we took some time to head down to New Orleans and also to Saints camp. And we had a chance to spend some time with Mr. Barry Hurstis himself. So it was pretty good to see everything out there. The fans were energized. The players also, they were pretty energized as well. So, all in all, I think it was a good weekend. What we saw on the field, they had their moments of good things. They had the moments of, okay, we're still a work in progress. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah, no question. And I know you and your son got a chance to not only catch up with Barry, and hello, Barry, if you're listening in tonight, but you also got to meet and hang out a little bit in person with our friend and our all-pro cornerback on the show, Lyndon Stevens. So that had to be exciting for your son to see the team up close and personal.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, man. Look, Kyle, he just had this magnetism going on. First thing, when after practice, Lyndon made a beeline to us, and when I was like, "Lyndon, it's me, Kyle," man. And he looked, he's like, "Oh, okay." So he came straight to us. We got a chance to do a selfie with him, and he signed my cap. Matter of fact, then Cam Jordan came up to us and he signed my cap again. I was like, okay, that was cool. And then Ben Watson came up. And when he came up, my son scored Ben Watson's practice glove. Still have it right here. Got the blood on it and everything. And he's like, "Dad, look, it's so cool. He's got blood on it." So, but that was really, really cool, man, just to hang out with him, to see the Saints. And, we've been to training camps here when they had time with the Texans for several years back until they suspended that preseason rivalry just last year. So, but anyway, man, it was great to hang out. And Barry, man, it was great to all these years to finally meet Barry in person. And he and I and Kyle got to hang out and talk a lot. And we did a video afterwards. So cool stuff, all in all. But I just have to say this, Bob. I think we have a pretty impressive squad in the black and gold.
Yes, they certainly look like it. Just as we talked about on last week's show, when we warned the fans not to expect a lot of the stars to play, or if they did, not to play very much, especially in that opening preseason game. And sure enough, players like Drew Brees, I think Ben Watson, and a handful of other guys sat out the game completely. Those, of course, were not injury related. Just the team doesn't need their stars to be stars yet. They're getting their work in practice, and these first couple preseason games are the opportunity for the coaching staff to see the new players and the players working their rear ends off to make this team or to take a spot from an established veteran. This is their opportunity to see those guys in game action. And like you pointed out, Kyle, and we've talked about it and speculated on it in the weeks and months leading up to that game, we suspected that this Saints team may be deeper than a lot of the teams that we've seen in recent years. And this first preseason game, there's nothing to get overly excited about because, again, it is just game one. But the initial impression of a lot of these guys, you had to be impressed coming away with how hard they played, even through late into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, guys are fighting for roster spots, right? And I think what was concerning to me was the first drive from the Jaguars going against our first team defense, right? But it didn't really surprise me that much, knowing that the Jaguars were going to try to test the Saints and run on those guys. The thing that was more telling to me was, just like what you said, how well the second, third, fourth string guys were out there battling for position. And you had a guy like Elliott making a name for himself with the strip sack fumbles that he caused too on his end. And then you had Jonathan Williams. He did a great job himself, making a name for himself. Look, not only there, but in training camp too. Jonathan Williams is proving thus far that he may be a viable option to kind of go collectively with Alvin Kamara in spelling the absence of Mark Ingram for those first 4 games, more than West and more than Vereen. But, I think it's going to be one of those deals where it's going to be weapons by committee, sort of the first 4 games, kind of feeling out if we're going to need to have him or if we're going to need to have Vereen. I'm not sure what's going to happen with West. Not sure what's going to happen with Edmonds. But thus far, Jonathan Williams, I think he's in the running for that position more so than those other guys.
Oh, I have to completely agree with you. And I like Jonathan Williams. For Saints fans that are unfamiliar with him, pull up some of his highlights from when he was a running back at Arkansas.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, he first came into the league. I believe he played the previous 2 seasons with the Buffalo Bills before the Saints signed him late in the year for their practice squad last year. And Jonathan Williams is a hard runner. I liked that signing at the time, and I was excited to see him in camp. Really, the only concern that you have to have with Williams, he does have a history of foot injuries, and that's kind of but slowed his progress so far in the pros. But Kyle, I completely agree with you. You have to, and I realize it's still early on, but you have to put him in the lead for that number 3 running back spot behind Ingram and Kamara. And as we know, and as we've talked about, that 3 spot is going to be very, very important the first 4 games of the season when Ingram serves his league suspension.
Right. Still, Bob and fans, you have to be hesitant, just like you said. You just don't know what's going to happen the next couple of weeks. You really know that second game, third games are very important in preseason for these guys, and fourth game is really important for the bubble guys, right? So will any one of these guys step it up to challenge him at this time? You're still young in the whole scheme of things, but it's going to be very important that we see some flashes of something from the other guys.
Yeah, no doubt. And you sort of alluded to this. Sean, Coach Payton, and the Saints offensive coaches, they opened the game. Kamara and Mark Ingram got a little bit of work the first two drives, and they looked exactly like you'd expect them to. And then after that, Terrence West and Shane Vereen got all the snaps up until I think it was the late in the third quarter. We've been talking about Jonathan Williams. He only got 4 offensive snaps the entire game. John Hendricks, the editor at Canal Street Chronicles, he did it last preseason too, and he does a great job. He puts out an article following this, the Saints preseason games with the snap counts on offense and defense. And if you're charting to see if any of your favorite players, are in the running for a roster spot or maybe even a starter's position, sometimes those snap counts through the preseason can be a good indicator of where your guys stand or where those bubble players stand. And according to John's chart, Jonathan Williams got 4 offensive snaps. Now, he made the most of them, and like you said, Kyle, he looked extremely impressive. But what I would like to see in Friday's game against Arizona, I would like to see Jonathan Williams and maybe Trey Edmonds get some of the snaps and some of the looks with maybe even the first team offensive line, but certainly the second team offensive line. And maybe if you're going to use West and Vereen, you already know what they can give. And frankly, I'm with you. I wasn't overly impressed with what they showed, at least this preseason game. But I would like to see Williams and Trey Edmonds get some looks against maybe the Cardinals' second team defensive unit on Friday.
Yeah, I tell you this much: Boston Scott, please keep an eye on him as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was Sean Payton, I wouldn't need to see any more from Ingram. I wouldn't need to see any more from Alvin Kamara. Again, we don't need to see anything from Drew Brees next game as well. But, let those guys kind of battle it out to see who's going to really excel with that first team offensive line is going to be the key. I know West had, 5 attempts. He averaged 2 yards per attempt. Jonathan Williams, he averaged 6.5 yards per attempt. Shane Vereen, 1.7, little under 2 yards per attempt. Boston Scott, he had that 7-yard scamper. That was his one carry. So all in all, man, I think these guys are going to get that opportunity because the coaches need to see in action with the play that they have against other opponents. I think also you can see a little bit of, I wouldn't call it fatigue, more than when you practice against the same person over and over and over and over again, you can get kind of lackadaisical, right? And to continue to having the challenge, like to face those guys with the Cardinals and the speed from those wideouts is going to be really good for Lattimore as well as for Crawley and Patrick Robinson and those guys to continue there. But how we're going to be able to attack that fast defense and those fast linebackers? Can these running backs be able to get to the second level? Will the offensive line be able to create some holes for them as well? So those are the things that I will be looking for, how the line play is going to really impact the game versus how the star play is going to impact the game. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, no question about it. And I thought, I agree with you, I thought that the top offensive line, the first team offensive line, played pretty well through the first half. Because again, we're talking about a very, very good defense in Jacksonville. So I mean, it was an early test for these guys, and I personally thought that they played well. They allowed Tom Savage, who started the game at quarterback and played the whole first half. They allowed him some time back there to go through his progressions, and I know we're going to talk about quarterbacks a little bit tonight. But they opened the holes for Ingram and Kamara. Where I was disappointed in was the backup offensive line. I really didn't see when Taysom Hill came into the game and played the second half, especially through the third quarter. They did not give him any time whatsoever to pass. They did not run block especially well. That has to be a concern, or not has to. My question to you is it a concern for you? We know what the Saints' top offensive line can do, and they're among the best starting five in the league. Is it concerning to you that this offensive line might lack a little bit of depth, given the performance that we saw from them last Thursday?
It's always a concern to lack depth anywhere, but it's not a major concern. See, if we look at Andrus Peat, he's coming back and he's being reintroduced to the line slowly but surely by the Saints coaching staff, right? So hopefully within the next 3 weeks, Andrus Peat will be a little bit ready to play a little bit more time, a little bit more snaps. But we have a guy behind him who's familiar with the NFL named Bushrod. I think this kid, Bushrod, scored a championship ring here with the Black and Gold as well, right? So that's a good thing right there. What I am concerned with is not more of what's happening with him. Clemente's loss is very telling, number one.
Yes.
Right? The flexibility, the versatility was just outstanding what he brought to the Saints offensive line. Will Bushrod be able to do the same? Because Bushrod has the ability to play guard as well as he has the ability to play tackle. He played tackle successfully before. Is he fast enough to be able to play tackle on the left? Not quite sure. I think he can probably spell ram check on the right side if necessary. So, but we still have to say who could be the next person up. So you have that guy like Landon Turner. You have Cameron Tom at center. Will those guys be able to contribute? And think about this: you have the LSU product in Clapp. Can he be able to contribute as well? So I think you're going to see more of those guys the next couple of games as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you almost have to. Because you have young guys like Will Clapp. Landon Turner is still pretty young. They have their fourth round draft choice, Rick Leonard, who they drafted.
Oh, I forgot about Leonard.
They drafted Leonard specifically for tackle. Probably his best fit would be on the right side to spell ram check or step in for him if necessary. So they have the young guys. They just need the reps. And I think that the coaching staff is going to give them those reps to find out whether they do feel comfortable with the depth. Because if they don't, veteran offensive linemen are fairly easy to pick up, at least in name value. On the street, our friend Bryce Harris has come in and out of New Orleans camp. I don't know how many dozens of times over the previous 2 or 3 years. But to have a guy on speed dial like that, for lack of a better term, you need to know what your young guys have first. Like you said, Kyle, you have Will Clapp, you have Rick Leonard. They're both rookies. Landon Turner is entering his third season, but had somewhat of a regression last year after showing some potential as a rookie. So you need to know what these guys can give to you if any of those starting five go down for any length of time. Because as you pointed out, numerous times on the show here, the Saints do not have Clemente anymore, and he could step in at any line position, and you really wouldn't have much of a drop off from your regular starters. Right. So that's a major free agency loss.
Well, you still have Laribas, who is familiar with the team, and Michael Ola he's an enigma, I would say it like that, because he has the size, he has the potential, just like Landon Turner. Both of those guys have the size and potential. Are they ready for that next step up, right? It's going to be the main point for their progression. So we still have some pretty good depth there. Rick Leonard, of course, like you said, you just don't know. You have Clapp, Teller, Leonard, Wozniak. You still have guys out there, but we just don't know. So who's going to be there, man? Is Clapp going to be available, or is he going to be one of those guys we find on the practice squad, or will the Saints even be willing to expose him to the practice squad, or could we find a guy like Landon Turner out on the street and Ola out on the street while Clapp and Leonard find their way onto this team? Or like you say, could we be in that ebb and flow where you do find somebody who gets cut and they become available for the Saints to be able to put into that rotation? So we still have 3 weeks, man, and even you've seen it even through the seasons that Sean Payton and the squad is not shy at making someone taking someone off the street to be able to put into the rotation if necessary, right? So we shall see, man. You never know. But Bob, let me ask you your opinion based upon what you saw of the offensive, let's say the skill guys, like the wide receivers who are not named, not named Michael Thomas, who were those guys that really hit you as, that's an eye-opener. That's a guy that I like to see more of. Who were those guys that played exceptionally well in preseason for you?
Well, you got to start with two guys that jumped out to me. One, and he caught everybody's attention, was the Saints rookie third-round pick, Tre'Quan Smith. He showed good burst, as he has all throughout camp. But he also showed me a good route running ability over the middle. Like his routes look crisp to me. He shows good hands, a good catch radius. He reaches out away from his body to snag that ball in and pull it in. And when I'd watched him at Central Florida, that'd be the only knock that I personally had on him. And everybody that watches film, you often come away with different opinions. But the knock that I had on Smith was that he got a little, and I'm not calling him a lazy player, far from it, but his routes weren't as sharp as what I'd like them to be over the middle personally. And he stood out to me on Thursday as just the opposite. He was coming back to the ball. He played like a young veteran instead of a rookie seeing game time experience for the first time. And I was extremely impressed by what I saw from him. And then another guy that jumped out to me, and I wrote about him early in the spring, right after the draft, as a part of an undrafted free agency profile that I usually do. Our friend Lyndon Stevens brought him up too, is Keith Kirkwood. Kirkwood is a big-bodied, physical guy, good hands, runs also some pretty crisp routes, and he played pretty well, I thought, on Thursday as well. And he'll give you some contribution on special teams as well. So when you talk about a guy trying to make this team, and guys at the bottom half of the receiver spots that are fighting for this final maybe 2 spots that we speculated on last week, if Kirkwood could continue to flash potential on the field as a receiver and play well on special teams, that has to give him the edge. So Kirkwood and Smith certainly stood out to me. I thought Josh Huff had a pretty good game as well. People, and I'm guilty of it too, myself included, people that are speculating on different players that could grab this final receiving spot or two, they kind of leave Josh Huff out of the conversation. But he has nice hands and good speed. And he plays with a lot of confidence, and I really like the way he played as well. He had pretty good rapport. I don't know if Huff was in the game when Savage was the quarterback, but he seemed to have pretty good rapport with Hill when Hill was out there. So I'm going to keep an eye on Josh Huff too as the preseason progresses. How about yourself? Who stood out to you receiver-wise?
Well, of course, Traquan was the main guy, right? Other than Traquan, Kirkwood was the next person, in my opinion. Now, the concern at training camp, and I saw it firsthand, Kirkwood could be up and down. You don't know. He's kind of have that Brandon Coleman complex a little bit. Not as bad as Brandon, but a little bit, where you don't know if he's going to catch the ball or not. And I know he could be a developmental guy, or would the Saints be willing to expose him out there? The Saints have a potential of having 6 wide receivers that could be very critical to the rotation this season, right? So would Kirkwood be that last guy in a part of the rotation? Would it be Tommy Lee again, or will it be like you say, a Huff, or what about Austin Carr? You know, so you have guys that are available who are pretty good at catching the ball, and Austin Carr has done a really good job during practice. Will we be able to see that on the field the next 2 games as well? So that's what I'm going to be looking for. So, but other than Traquan and Kirkwood, no one else really stood out for me. Of course, Michael Thomas, right? But other than those 2 guys, man, and one thing I liked about Traquan was his yak. And remember, in college, he led. Was it the FBS when it came to yak? So I like what I saw with him being able to catch the ball. I like the fact that when he was stumbling and he regained his footing, he held that ball high and tight in the right hand, right? Because that defender from the Jaguars came in to try to knock it out. He didn't get that opportunity, and I watched that play over and over and over again, and I noticed how well he held the ball. So he protects the ball very well. So I like what I see out of this kid. I posed a question to the Saints News Network followers on Twitter. Where do you believe Traquan Smith will be a part of the Saints wide receiver rotation in the beginning of the season? And 19% said that he'll be our number 2 wide receiver, 60% said number 3 wide receiver, and 21% said he'll be the 4th wide receiver. I still believe he's going to probably be number 3 behind Ginn as well as Thomas. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I did see that poll up there, and I voted for exactly what you just said. I think at least coming into the season, with the receiving core that they have on the field right now, Michael Thomas is obviously your unquestioned number 1. I see Ted Ginn being your number 2 in most situations anyway, with Smith going to be your number 3. And I think a few weeks ago, and I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this too. A few weeks ago, a lot of people, if you would have put that poll question up, a lot of people, myself included, probably would have said number 4 for Smith, at least to open the year, expecting that Cameron Meredith would be either your number 3 or perhaps even your number 2 guy. But Meredith seems to be a little bit behind schedule on rehabbing that ACL injury he suffered with the Bears last season. He really hasn't practiced in training camp at all, and of course, obviously they sat him out the game against Jacksonville, and you have to assume that they're going to sit him out against Arizona as well. What did you see when you guys were down there, or what are you hearing from the team as far as Meredith and his schedule for return?
From talking to Barry, and Barry got some information from the other 2 guys, a couple of the guys he talked to. Cameron Meredith's progress is not being withheld because of the injury to the knee, more than there's something else that's going on. And I know he returned to the practice field today, but from a tweet he made on yesterday, as well as some information from was it Ian Rappaport? Go figure. that that it's something. It's not pertaining to the knee. It's something else. Another type of injury that he was dealing with. Just like with Davenport, people were speculating for such a long time what's really happening with the rookie, and could it be a groin injury? Could it be a groin tear or pull or whatever? Well, guess what? He returns to practice today as well. So you don't know, especially with the team. They're not going to divulge injury information. They don't have to at this moment.
Right.
So do we actually know exactly what's happening with Meredith? Or are they playing it safe to be just like they were doing with Okafor before his injury today, right? Just kind of limiting his availability on the practice field to get him up and running so he can be ready by the first game of the season. So I don't know, man. I think, Bob, we're just going to have to wait to see the next couple of weeks where Meredith is going to play out in this whole situation.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's actually encouraging to hear you put that the way you did about Meredith, because over the last couple of weeks, I was beginning to think, and much to the horror of most Saints fans, I was almost beginning to draw a comparison with my favorite Saints whipping boy over the years, Jairus Byrd. When they brought Jairus Byrd in from Buffalo on a big free agent contract, that first year, that first training camp that Byrd was here in 2014, all you ever saw from him was him playing catch on the sidelines, if he came out onto the practice field at all. And then we came to find out as the weeks and months progressed that Byrd had some serious injury concerns when they brought him in. And never really fully recovered. And then, of course, when he got onto the field, many Saints fans, myself included, would have wished he never would have stepped onto the field. And I got to be honest, I was beginning to maybe worry that the same sort of thing was happening with Meredith. Now, in Meredith's case, we knew the injury that he suffered, last year, the ACL that cost him to miss the season with the Chicago Bears before he became a restricted free agent. So to hear that it's not a complication with the knee, and that perhaps that they're bringing him along slowly, is definitely encouraging. However, having said that, you got to believe that the red letter date to circle on the calendar for Meredith would have to be maybe that third preseason game, when teams traditionally use it as, for lack of a better term, for a dress rehearsal, when all of their stay is pretty much all hands on deck. All of their starters, most of their starters, will play into the third quarter. If Meredith is not among that group, would that be a cause for us to be concerned about his availability, at least for the first half of the season?
No, and I'm not going to be concerned. I'll be honest with you. I think the key word is what you said, availability. Right? And availability equals dependability to me. If you're available, we can depend upon you being there. If you're not available, there's a reason, and I need to look at my options. Okay? And I think right now, if we have a young man like Smith continuing to progress under CJ, and now you talked about his route running. He did round off some routes. But he did show the separation that's necessary, that's been missing a little bit from some of our slot receivers last year. So I like the fact that we have that option in this young man. And I also like the fact that Tommy Lee, and we still have some guys out there who could possibly progress. Kirkwood, he has a good radius when it comes to throwing to him. If he can hold on to the ball, that'll be great. Carr, he has at least dependable hands there. So I think there are some options that can give us some time to get Meredith kind of healthy. Look, I look at Meredith, I look at Davenport, and I look at Okafor. If those guys don't have to be truly healthy and ready until the 6th, 7th, or 8th game of the season, in my opinion. If they're ready by that time and ready to rock and roll, I will be happy. Okay, but I'm not too concerned about Meredith, and I'm not too concerned about Davenport, guys. We still have George Johnson. We still have Muhammad back there. We still have guys, and we keep forgetting about this Trey Hendrickson, who Coach Payton has praised in the media just recently about his development. So, we still have people who can help Cam Jordan to put pressure on the ball. So that's why I'm not overly concerned about those three individuals.
Now, and you led a perfect segue into the defensive side of the ball. Well, first and foremost, the big news of the day at a New Orleans Saints camp was that Alex Okafor, who, as we know, is recovering from a Achilles tendon injury that ended his year last year. And like you pointed out, Kyle, they've been bringing him along pretty slowly, but he's been on the field. He saw some snaps against no, I take that back. I don't think he did see some snaps against Jacksonville, but he has been on the practice field. Anyway, Okafor went down with an injury today that caused everybody, players, coaches, fans, and trainers to hold their breath. Now, Okafor ultimately got up and walked off under his own power with a limp. I know, even right up until our airtime tonight, I was trying to see if I could hear anything about Okafor's status, what was going on with him, and what happened. Had you heard anything? Since he walked off of the field this afternoon.
No, even the WWL guys, they were kind of up in the air. Deuce made some good points. They made some valid points as far as he walked off with his own power, but Christian made a good counterpoint. He said, well, Deuce, when you tore your ACL, did you walk off? Yeah, I did. So, you just don't know, man. So I just hope that Okafor is okay, man, and the guys respect him a lot. That's why they were silent, and they really they've been cheering for him. They really love to see a winner, someone who can be able to rebound from a serious injury the way he has. So it's not the Achilles, it's the knee, and could the knee just be something minor like a sprain? Yeah, that's still a possibility. So until we actually know, we don't know. So let's just pray for the best.
Yeah, certainly. And obviously, as our listeners know, they can keep tuned to both the Saints News Network and Canal Street Chronicles. As soon as any of us find out anything, we try to get news out as quickly as what we can, quickly and as detailed as what we can. So we'll all try to stay on top of that story. But outside, you mentioned Trey Hendrickson. I thought that the Saints defensive line played extremely well throughout the game on Thursday night. Even the third and fourth teamers. Who are a couple of the guys that stood out to you up front for the Saints defensive line on Thursday?
Oh, that's easy, man. Elliott and Lawrence, right? Those two guys did a very good job, and there was that other young man who had a sack as well. His name is going to come to me, but okay, so let's be fair. Elliott has experience in the NFL, 5th season being in the National Football League. He played against another third stringer. I want to see what he can do against a first stringer. That's what I would like to see. Mm-hmm. Could this guy be the person of mystery that we need to have to be able to make an impact on our defense. Because, to be honest, I love my boy Muhammad. I didn't see him show up on Saturday, to be honest, right? I didn't see our other first stringers even putting any pressure on Bortles, guys, you know? So Elliott took advantage of his situation. Can Elliott take advantage of his situation against better competition with the Cardinals, first stringers or second stringers versus the third stringers? So if he can repeat and do well and repeat the next game and do well, we may have a diamond in the rough showing up there. And Lawrence, man, think about this guy had 2 knee injuries as well, and he performed very well on last weekend. So those are 2 guys I would like to see how they continue their progress for the next couple of games as well.
Yeah, I would too, and I'm with you. I think most Saints fans, Devereaux Lawrence and Jaron Elliott really had to be your standout and defensive MVPs of Thursday night's game. And Elliott in particular, Lawrence, you have to love his hustle and his push from the inside. And he looks like he has a nonstop motor. And from your lineman, you can't ask for anything more than that. And Elliott shows such a burst around the edge, and he has that long reach. He forced 2 fumbles during the game. I think the Saints only recovered 1 of them, but it was obviously at a key moment of the game. It was the game-clinching play. But I love to see Elliott's burst around the edge and his reach around his opposing offensive tackles. Now, I'm with you. I would certainly like to see an encore performance from him, particularly against maybe the next level of competition. I doubt we get to see him much, if at all, against opposing first teamers, but I'd like to see what he could do against a couple second string tackles. Because we remember, and you and I talked about it often last year, what kind of raw skills that Muhammad has. And it was enough for the Saints coaches to keep him around. They just didn't give him many snaps during the regular season. Well, Muhammad, with Cam Jordan sitting out this past Thursday night, Muhammad had an opportunity to start. And just like he pointed out, he didn't do very much against the Jacksonville offensive line. In fact, frankly, the Saints' defensive front 7 sort of got pushed around by the Jaguars.
Sure did.
In those first couple of drives. And I understand Okafor wasn't out there, Cam wasn't out there, and that does make a big difference. But I would like to see, because this was something that the Saints defense struggled in a lot last season. The first drive of the game, I think that they gave up points in 11 or 12 of the 16 games that they played on the opposing team's first drive of the game. And when you can't start out your game, even with Drew Brees and that explosive offense, you don't want to see him start out every single game in a hole like that. So I would definitely like to see the Saints defensive front 7, kind of strengthen up a little bit, shut down the running game, put a little bit of pressure on the passer. Now, I thought Sheldon Rankins did play well. He had some nice push, but the rest of the defensive front 7, like you said, Kyle, I wasn't overly impressed before they stepped off of the field.
Yeah, man. And Bob, think about this. Last year, they gave up initial points, and you saw like teams just walk down the field on the Saints defense that first drive, but they had a bend but not break mentality, right? And they usually adapted to whatever offense that was posed on them, and those guys started to that second half. Remember, in the second half of games, they limited teams to score. So that was kudos for them. The problem is, like you said, let's say we do not win the toss, and our guys have to go on defense, and we have this new kickoff rule where you may have teams at your 25 or 30 now versus back on the 20 or below that or whatever. So what's going to happen there is that the percentages for that team to be able to pick up first downs or score is going to be a lot higher this season. We can't allow scoring situations to continue where we're just figuring out the team, figuring out what's going to happen. We've got to be the ones opposing our will upon the opposing offense. So I know Amunada and I know Rankins are two guys that have done very well. I still believe we're missing a big impact player on that defensive line. Tyler Davidson's great, but will we see the Sheldon Rankins that we need to see from being selected as our first-round draft pick a couple of years ago to be that impact dominant player? Or will it be the big Nigerian? Will it be him? So I don't know, man. That concerned me how Leonard Fournette was able to easily run through our line. It was like, what's happening? Is this of old or what? Now, I'm going to say this, I think some Saints fans are going to get upset with me. I think we have a liability in A.J. Klein right now. Okay? I don't see Klein running as fast as he needs to run. I think we would probably have a better mix if we had Robertson, Davis, and probably Anzalone or Teo out there versus A.J. Klein. And I like Klein. I think he did a very serviceable job last season, but I think we need to have some more speed guys out there. And Robertson did a great job filling in for him the past 2 seasons when he needed to fill in at middle linebacker, remember? So I don't know, man. I just think Robertson is a better, faster linebacker at this time.
I don't disagree with you at all. I don't know if I'm willing to step out on that branch and say I'm concerned about A.J. Klein yet, but in my opinion, I think that if the Saints come out in a traditional 4-3 alignment, where they're coming out with three starting linebackers, your 3 most athletic linebackers are, we already know Demario Davis. We're hoping that Alex Anzalone can stay healthy because he's one heck of an athlete. And I would take Craig Robertson over A.J. Klein as well. I'm going to kind of allude to Robertson in an article that I'm releasing tomorrow morning. But Robertson has been, in my opinion, the Saints' most consistent and most versatile linebacker in each of the last 2 seasons.
And underappreciated.
Underappreciated.
Underappreciated as well.
Oh yeah, no question. Is he a perennial Pro Bowler? No. But he is a capable every down linebacker. That can match up pretty well athletically, covering backs coming out of the backfield. He's an effective blitzer, and he plays the run pretty well, although he does get out of position from time to time. Yep. Now A.J. Klein is the smarter, more fundamentally smart, I should say, of the 2 players. But I agree with you, and I saw this last year too. I thought he was a better athlete than what he has shown, at least in a Saints uniform. So I would certainly like to see a little bit more sideline to sideline plays from Klein. He does well if he's coming straight ahead. He can fill the hole well in the running game, and he knows what he's looking at as far as reading opposing blocking assignments or even patterns coming out of the backfield. I have to question if he can match step for step with even the average back or tight end coming off of the line of scrimmage. And, we've seen this song play out before with the Saints linebackers where they were just overmatched athletically week after week after week. And I think that this is a more athletic linebacking core. I agree with you. But I don't think A.J. Klein is one of the Saints' top 3 linebackers at this stage.
Right. He plays the run pretty well, right? But if you look at the opponents that we're going to face, especially when we have that block of games against like the Rams, Eagles, Atlanta, and the other guys, right? We need to have some speed. And what I saw from Elliott, right, started making me to think, is this guy a defensive end or more one of the, like a 3-4 type of hybrid linebacker? Does he have that potential to do well in coverage? Could we see someone like that be considered a part of the linebacking core versus just a defensive end? I'm just thinking, man, we're going to need some speed. We're going to continue to need some speed with the type of opponents that we're going to face this 2018 season, especially if we want to make a run for the Super Bowl.
Oh, no question about it. And even last year, as improved as the Saints' defense was as a whole, it was mainly because of the play of the defensive ends up front, defensive tackles playing well, and such improved play from the secondary. Most of the year, the linebacking core was still the weak part of that defense. And you look at what they have now, and again, we know what Robertson can do. He's done it pretty well for New Orleans the previous 2 seasons. We think that Anzalone has nice potential, and he flashed that before going down with a shoulder injury last year, and you have to be concerned about his injury history. Demario Davis looks like he's going to be a stud. But if you have a little bit of injury concern again, or if Davis, on the off chance that Davis isn't what we thought he was when they brought him in, that Saints linebacking core still looks pretty thin, at least from a versatility aspect. Manti Te'o played pretty well last year. We've talked about Klein tonight. And, Nate Stupar is coming back from injury too. But each of those 3 guys do have major weaknesses when it comes to their game. Te'o is a liability in pass coverage. We know that. A.J. Klein looks like he could be a liability when opposing offenses at least spread the field on him, that he might have a hard time keeping up. Nate Stupar is an extremely smart player, and he actually plays the pass well, but he's been known to get out of position against the running game. So if you're down, if one of your top 3 goes down, especially for any length of time, now all of a sudden you're talking about a very match-up-based linebacker, whether it's Stupar, Te'o, or A.J. Klein. You might struggle with some of those matchups if you have to plug any of them in.
Right. Look, somebody else is going to be out on the street, and I don't know if we have seen the end of our linebacking core as well. Of course, we still have a few more weeks into the season. Health is always an issue. Availability is always an issue, right? So to be able to fairly evaluate a player's performance, we have to see them on the field. And what we see second and third game is really going to give me some indication of how this 53 is going to possibly look.
Yeah. Kyle, I wanted to ask you about your opinion of the Saints secondary as well, particularly the cornerback unit. Now, one of the things that both you and I were kind of highlighting last week at this time, as we were mentioning the things that we were looking forward to seeing in the game against Jacksonville, was the play of the backup defensive backs, the guys fighting to make this team. We both agreed that there's it seems to be quite a bit of talent in the Saints defensive backfield, but behind Lattimore and Crawley and Patrick Robinson at cornerback, we've been kind of waiting for a guy to really step forward and take that fourth and perhaps fifth spot. Now, Arthur Millette has played extremely well, both in practice and he played well the other night. What did you see from our other guys at cornerback? Lyndon Stevens, P.J. Williams, etc.
Yeah, man, I'm concerned about P.J. That's what I will say. I know he got injured. In my opinion, I thought he was going to be obviously the fourth guy. Millette has been having a great camp. Even Coach Aaron Glenn has praised him. Now, Aaron Glenn has also praised the rookie Jamerson.
Mm-hmm.
But think about that. So will the rookie have an opportunity to crack in there? We see what message that Sean Payton sent to the team as far as getting rid of last year's first game starter, Devontae Harris, man, and that was kind of shocking. And I think it was unfair calls on him, especially that last call. That was one of those little ticky-tack type of calls a referee would give. I don't think he impeded the guy's progress to get a pass interference call, but they sent a message that we're not going to have this type of play, and I guess it also was a message that Sean Payton was saying we have guys here that I believe I could be more confident in than just Devontae Harris. So, Lyndon had a couple good coverage times. A couple times he played off, gave opportunities to the wide receiver. That is something I think he can learn from. Lyndon still has an uphill battle to be able to make the squad, unless he can be able to make the squad as a special teamer, right? So if I look at the top guys right now, of course it would be Crawley, Lattimore, Robinson, and then P.J. Williams, and then Millette. That'll be my top five, and I think there's a possibility they could probably carry 6 or 7, right? So one of those guys could possibly just be a good special teamer.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more. From what I was watching, Lyndon finally got his opportunity for coverage responsibilities, but it wasn't until later in the fourth quarter. And like you said, the Saints were playing a little bit different defensive coverage at that point. They were trying to protect a lead. So Lyndon and the rest of the Saints secondary were playing a little bit more off the ball. Now, I did like the way he and a few of those other defensive backs, Jamerson comes to mind too. I did like their reaction to the catch in front of them. To bring those guys down quickly and not allow much yardage after the catch, which is obviously going to be important in key situations as we go through the season. I would like to see these young defensive backs. I mean, they brought them in for a reason. They brought Jamerson in. They drafted Cameron Moore, who I think has been invisible. I didn't see him on the field at all the other night. They brought in Lyndon Stevens. I would like to see those guys get coverage duties earlier in the game this upcoming Friday against Arizona. Because, again, just like you said offensively, with Kamara, Ingram, Breeze, Thomas, we know what they can do. I'd like to see them, give the younger guys, get them into the defense earlier. Now, all of them had opportunities on special teams, and the Saints special teams I thought played pretty well the other night. What did you see from that unit?
Yeah, they did. Tate had a big return. Boston Scott had a big return. You know what you're going to get from Lutz as well as from Thomas Morstead, so that's not a big deal. But, of course, how we field the punts or how we're able to get those gunners down on onto the punt return guys is going to be the key. So, we didn't have much to go by this game, but next game I really going to pay a little bit more attention to this. Boston Scott, all I can say is this. If we see him be able to put another 30 to 40 yards out there the next two games, I think he may have a better chance of making the team than ever believed before. He has to continue to field the punts as well as the kickoffs cleanly. Brandon Tate showed what he could do as a seasoned pro, but still, let's see what he's able to do these next couple of games himself. So, man, I think special teams will have the opportunities this season, especially with these new rules with the kickoff returns. But, when we have Westhoff coming back as the special teams coach, I think we are in for a very productive year in our special teams unit.
Yeah, I think so too. I like how much more athletic they got on the coverage units, particularly the gunners and your outside guys on both punt and kickoff coverage. You got to believe that Tate and Scott are the two front runners for your return jobs right now, which I kind of like to see. I kind of like to see the cream separating itself as early as possible to give these two guys more opportunities for returns to see if one separates himself from the other. Because like you said, Kyle, Boston Scott and Brandon Tate are both fighting hard at rather full positions at running back for Scott and at wide receiver for Tate. So you certainly want to see them do something on the offensive side of the football while they have opportunities in preseason. But it would certainly cement their roster spot more if they could stand out as a possible game-breaking return threat.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd like to see how the blocking is going to be executed as well, man. I'd really like to replay some of those type of situations. Who on that special teams unit is given opportunities to open up the field, to put a good block into place. I'd like to see penalties limited. I would like to see how these guys are actually going to create some separation for the returner. So those are the things I'll look at, man, how those players engage the blocks, how they keep on the blocks, how they're able to be able to open up the lanes. So those are things to look out for within the next couple of weeks as well.
Well, definitely. And yeah, as we know, we mentioned it a few times tonight, the Saints' next preseason game is this Friday evening. They're taking on the Arizona Cardinals. What are a couple of the things that you're really going to be watching for closely in preseason game number 2?
Again, offensive line, defensive line. Second team defense, second team offense. Why? Because you mentioned it earlier. How well the depth guys play are going to be great indicators. Should we be okay with who we have behind the first teamers? So I want to see how well they're able to do. I'm also curious how our first team guys, can they be able to get to the quarterback? If they're not able to get to the quarterback, how our cornerbacks and defensive backfield will be able to hold up to any of the pressure from the quarterback. So I think what's the young man? Josh Rowland is going to be out there for Arizona. I wonder if Dennis Allen is going to dial up some blitzes for him. Will they be able to confuse him in some of the coverage packages as well? So those are the things that are critical for me. I don't care to see Drew Brees, Kamara, and Ingram. They can stay home, and Michael Thomas as well. So let's just go ahead and see. But I understand the fans are going to want to see Drew Brees, right? Well, for a series or whatever. But I don't believe. I really doubt if Sean Payton is going to put him in a compromising position out there right now. So fans don't expect to see too much as far as Brees or any major fireworks from Brees for that first series if he does get to play. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking out for, Bob.
And I agree with you. I don't know that we'll see Drew. Personally, if I was Coach Payton, I probably wouldn't play him in Game 2 either. What I would do at quarterback, though, as we know, Tom Savage opened the game last week, and he played all but the final snap of the first half before Taysom Hill came in and played the majority of the second half. I think that I would flip-flop that this week. I would give Taysom his chance with the twos or maybe even the ones if Drew doesn't play. Because, this is what I saw from Savage in the first half last week. And I tweeted it out too, I think, during the game. Tom Savage is exactly what we knew he was, to borrow a phrase from former Vikings coach Dennis Green. Tom Savage is exactly who we thought he was, and that is ordinary. He's not going to be anything special. The best you're going to get from him is some solid play. Hope he doesn't turn the ball over, and we saw that. Against a very good Jacksonville team, and they moved the ball fairly well, I guess. Right. It's time to give Hill a shot now, because I personally haven't seen anything from him. His stat line against Jacksonville was solid. If you just look at the stats, I think he was 8 for 9. He had a really nice 20 or 25-yard completion to Smith, where he stepped up in the pocket, handled the pressure well, and delivered the ball to Smith right on target. Other than that, the rest of his passes were checkdowns. He led the team in rushing, and we know how athletic he is. But what I saw was a lot of, if he wasn't going to check the ball down, it was one quick read, and if it wasn't there, he took off and ran. That's not the way that's not the way Sean Payton wants to run his offense, I wouldn't think. So I would like to see Hill get a shot with the first team offensive line, with Michael Thomas and those other guys out there for as long as they're going to play. And I'd like to see Hill have an opportunity to go through his reads a little bit, to see if he can go through his reads effectively against the first or second team NFL defense.
Yeah. I'm going to say this, man. Hill was running for his life because the protection wasn't there. And it was wise when the play calls adjusted for that, where they had him rolling out, where they had him do that read option, right? Mm-hmm. So they utilized the skills that was given to them. Right, his ability to make plays with his legs. Yes, and I think Bobby Hebert echoed the same thing you said. Let's try to see what he can do with the first teamers. That's going to be a key. Does he have what it counts? Is he going to stand in the pocket or make the run? So if he starts making the run, then we need to find another son of a gun. That's what I would say. Look, man, I watched Tom Savage in Houston the past couple of years, and I was surprised when the Saints signed him. But if you look at any other option at that time, there weren't too many other guys that were capable backups. Now, right. You're going to have some guys that will eventually hit the market due to some cuts pretty soon, right? I'm interested in Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know if he can be able to survive out there with the Jets system right now. You know, I would love to have a guy like that behind Drew Brees, to be honest with you.
And, I was going to ask you about Bridgewater, too. I meant to last week because for a couple weeks now, rumors are coming out of Jets camp that they are, quote unquote, open to trading Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
Well, that's all fine and dandy. After one preseason game, apparently Sam Darnold is the next Joe Namath insert Hall of Famer here. If they're open to trading Teddy Bridgewater, I'd be interested to see what they'd be asking for him. If I were a team in the position of, say, the Saints, with a veteran Hall of Fame quarterback like Brees, who's probably only going to play, let's face reality. Statistically, would be lucky if we get 3 more good years from him. I would love to see 5, 8, 10 more years, but realistically, probably 3. Bridgewater is still a very young man. I think he's 25 or 26 years of age, recovering from a devastating knee injury, but he's a full year and a half, and maybe even 2 years outside of the injury itself. So physically, he should be okay. If someone like the Jets were asking for a mid or hopefully late round pick, I agree with you. I think that's something that I would like to see the Saints perhaps explore, because I for one do not feel comfortable with either Hill or Tom Savage as my number 2 quarterback at this point.
I will be surprised if somebody does trade for him. I'm not saying it won't happen. I would be surprised. Look, the Jets have McCown. They know what they have in him. They have Darnold. They know this kid is their heir apparent. So they have McCown for one more season. You have Darnold as his backup for the time being. Teddy is really, I think they gave him a shot to be able to make the squad, but they're more giving him a shot to be able to do, like what you said, a setup for a trade. He looked good, that first game. Darnold looked very good as well. He made some good decisions. Teddy Bridgewater can win in today's National Football League. We don't need him right now. Why not bring him in? That's my opinion. I think give him a full year, another year to learn the system under Peyton. Give him a year or more to be able to understand how Drew Brees as a leader runs this offense. And when Brees wins that Super Bowl and rides off into the sunset, he'll be ready. I think there's a lot of positives more than negatives to be able to have a guy like Teddy Bridgewater in our system.
I don't disagree at all. And again, if it doesn't, and we don't know what the Jets could perhaps be asking for him. If they're asking for a first or second or probably even a third-round pick, I hang up the phone and move on with my life.
Teddy Bridgewater,
but if
in my opinion,
if it's a fourth or a later-round pick, I think it is worth it. At that point, I'd consider it a high-reward, low-risk kind of move.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if a fourth-rounder would be someone to suffice. I think you're looking at more fifth, sixth type round asking price right now. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it. I know there are some other quarterback situations that may need to have a guy like Bridgewater behind and ready to go. Think about Seattle. They don't really have much behind Russell Wilson, right? I know Ryan Fitzpatrick is right there behind Jamerson, but people are starting to say if Winston doesn't get it together this season, he may be showing the door. So
yeah.
And I look at Houston, of course, Deshaun Watson, he's going to be progressing well. Could they need a serviceable backup behind him at this time? So, you've got situations out there where Teddy Bridgewater could be utilized effectively. I think New Orleans is a better place for a guy like Bridgewater, in my opinion. I always thought I was kind of concerned they didn't make a play on him when he became available.
Yeah, let's look at it from someone like Teddy's point of view too. Again, he's a young guy. He's a former first-round draft choice.
Yep.
If I'm Teddy Bridgewater and I had my choice of where to go other than the New York Jets, I'm doing kind of what you just did. I'm looking throughout the league. He's not going to go in anywhere and be a starter right now, but he would want to be a starter sooner rather than later. So you look at some of the other young quarterbacks throughout the league. Deshaun Watson, you mentioned. Mahomes out in Kansas City. All the first-round draft choices at quarterback that we saw this season. You're not going to want to go anywhere they are because if they're not already the starter, they're going to be entrenched as the starter. I would sit there and I would look at a team like the New England Patriots or the New Orleans Saints, someone that has a guy who, again, realistically, probably only has a couple more years left. And then I'm going to say, if I have to sit behind anyone, I would rather sit behind a Drew Brees or a Tom Brady, and maybe they're going to be done in a year or 2 years. I'm still going to be a young guy. I can step in and I can be the starter at that point in time. So again, like you said, we don't know what's going on in New York Jets headquarters, what they're asking, whether they're even realistically willing to trade Teddy Bridgewater. But if all that perfect storm would come together, I certainly would not mind seeing Teddy Bridgewater in a New Orleans Saints uniform.
Look, and not only that, you have a precarious situation in Dolphin land as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know Tannehill is coming back from injury, right? You have questionable situations because if the Lions don't really make it, I know Patricia's first year as head coach, but if his system doesn't gel well with what's happening with Matthew Stafford, and I know he has major contracts that is playing it out, but could he be on the market in another couple of years? So, whatever situation is going to be, or the availability for a guy like Bridgewater, he's going to have to be patient. That's the way I look at it, and I think New Orleans gives him a better option to be patient, to sit there and be ready just in case something does come up where within the next 2 years that he could be able to step into this rotation. So that's my thoughts and my 2 cents. I don't know how much that's worth in this market, but that's what I see for Mr. Bridgewater. Let me ask you this, man. I know we talked a lot about the Saints, a lot about our team. One thing I noticed about the team when I was at camp is the focus from Cam Jordan, man. He just seemed to be so dialed in this season, and you hear it and there was a great article on NFL.com's website about how the team is dialed in to make sure they can position Drew Brees to go out a winner. That's the feeling I get from this squad, that these guys are ready to win because we know we have a limited time with Mr. Brees. What's your thoughts?
Same. Same. I'm not surprised to hear any of that. Anybody that has played with Drew Brees at any point in his career, even before New Orleans when he was in San Diego, any of Brees' current or former teammates absolutely love the guy. They love what he does for the team. Obviously, being a star on the field will tend to endear you to your teammates if you're producing. But even in that locker room, you can tell that they look up to him that he has been the unquestioned leader of that team. And he's just the kind of guy that you want to go out on that field and just bust your butt. Not only for the guys beside of you, because that's what the team is all about, but for your guy at the top, for your Drew Brees at quarterback. And this team, and we said it on here before, this team had a taste of success last year. And for a lot of these guys, they were second, many of them first-year pros, to have a taste of success so quickly, and to have it end the way it did in the playoffs. When they know what could have been, and we've seen a couple of the Saints players. Alvin Kamara is the one that stands out, talking about what could have been, and having just all the confidence in the world that if they would have gotten past Minnesota in the playoffs, that they would have been able to beat Philadelphia, even in Philadelphia, and then the sky's the limit after that. And that comes from the guys at the top. And it's not only Drew Brees, but you mentioned Cam Jordan, too, defensively. And we've talked on here about how Cam is the unquestioned leader of that defense. And I'm sure you guys saw it at camp when I've taken my daughters to camp in previous years. We saw it. The younger players on that Saints defense, they really rally around Cam Jordan. They know what he does. He will leave every drop of blood and sweat on that field to try to get the job done. And if he's going to do it, if your Drew Brees and your Cam Jordans are going to do that for you, for your team, for them, how could you give any less of an effort? And for a group of young guys like this Saints team is, to have two leaders like that at the top that lead by example first, and they do it. They lead by example from the film room to the locker room to the field. It's not just on the field. We have, we've spoken many times about how this team kind of has a special feel to it. It's because of reasons like that. It's because of your leaders on each side of the ball that kind of mold a young team like this group is into all the same kind of attitude, the same kind of mentality, and the same kind of focus. And I love the laser-sharp focus that this team had last year, and it appears to have just gotten sharper this offseason.
Yeah, sharper, focused, people ready to be able to win. They've got to come out the gates. I believe within the first 6 games, they got to be at least 4-2 or 5-1, or why not 6-0, right? They've got to come out the gates ready, pumped, and ready to go, man. We can't have the difference between a team that's going to win and a team that's just average, in my opinion, is that we talked a little bit about it, like the defense. That defense has to be ready to impose their will upon the opponent's offense. But also, the team has to be ready and focused enough that there's no such thing as one of those trap games, right? No, there's no such thing. It's a game that we're favored to win, so we're going to win. It's not we're going to have a game leak through or whatever. No, we're going to win. Think about that 2011 team. If they did not lose to Tampa Bay and Los Angeles, we could have had a better seeding. So let's make sure we win the games that we're supposed to win. So there shouldn't be any letdowns. That first game against Tampa Bay shouldn't be any letdowns against the Cleveland Browns. There shouldn't be any letdowns against our little stepsisters, the Falconettes. So, I mean, think about it. It should never be a letdown this season. Do they have, like you say, that special juice to be able to win? Do we have it? And that special juice is doing the things, producing the results that's necessary at all times, and what's expected of you to be as a winner in today's National Football League.
And you are precisely right, and that's another good thing that I think that we can take away from that Saints game against Jacksonville. They came from, I think, 14 points down or 11 points down in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
They needed 2 scores late, back to back, to come out of that game, victorious. Now, granted, your stars, your first team units weren't in, and you mentioned it earlier in the show that these guys are fighting. Every guy that's on that field, especially at that point, is fighting just to make an NFL roster. But they came together and they continued to play as a team, and they did so together. Everybody knew their assignments and stuck to them, rather than anybody trying to stand out individually. And that we didn't just see individuals play hard until the whistle. We saw the entire units, offensive, defensive, special teams. They played hard and stuck to the game plan and stuck to that locker room culture that gets started by guys like Drew Brees and Cam Jordan. That trickles all the way down to the 52nd and 53rd guys on your team. Winning is a habit, and it's a habit that once you get into, it takes effort to break, and that's why everybody should be so excited after what happened with the 2017 New Orleans Saints. Why we should be? I mean, everybody is 0-0 this time of year, so every team has a certain amount of optimism.
Bob, can I say this? But
that's why you go ahead.
I'm going to say this. Here in Houston, before the Rockets won their 2 championships, they kept losing to Seattle Supersonics back then.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Kemp, he would do something devastating against them. Or they would lose against San Antonio Spurs with David Robertson just doing special things. And it wasn't until Akeem Olajuwon started becoming more focused and said, "The heck with it. Just give me the ball." Right? And it wasn't until he started having those complementary players like Kenny Smith, Vernon Maxwell, and those guys behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys got tired of just being enough, and they decided they wanted to win. You saw that out of that 2008 team. They got tired when going into training camp, they lost. They had not too good season the year before. They didn't want to just be good enough any longer. Brought in Vilma, right? Sharper, right? And those guys were extra pieces that helped them to be able to elevate to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
A team needs playmakers. This team has playmakers, of course, on the offensive side, but you need defensive playmakers. And we have that with Lattimore. We have it with Cam Jordan. We have it with this young kid, Marcus Williams. I don't care what you say. That kid he's going to be a stud. He's going to be a stud at safety, right? And who's the next stud that we need to have? We need to have at that second level. Could that be Demario Davis? So if you have key guys in place, I always say you need at least 3. You need some triplets on each side of the ball, right? We have Michael Thomas, Kamara, or Mark Ingram, and Drew Brees. That's our triplets on offense, or it could be quadruplets, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And could Demario Davis be a part of the defensive quadruplets that we could be able to talk about? So that's what we need. The leadership, the passion, the drive, and that little extra something. I heard Kobe Bryant talking to the kids at Alabama. He went to go visit. Nick Saban invited him in to talk to those guys. And Kobe and Nick Saban talking, it did not matter who was the opponent. What matters is how you prepare. Are they willing to prepare to be the winners we believe they can be? That's all it is.
Yep. Yep, and we see exactly what you're talking about, and I'm going to use this one-on-one matchup as only an example. Every single day in practice this camp, Michael Thomas versus Marshawn Lattimore. Neither guy is giving an inch, and it's just practice. To echo the words of Allen Iverson years ago, it's just practice. These guys don't care. They are competitors. Right down to their inner soul, they are competitors. And even against a teammate, a friend, they're not going to let up an inch. And those are the kind of one-on-one battles that we're seeing and reading and hearing about coming from this New Orleans Saints team day after day in practice. That's only going to make guys better when they step out onto the field and things become a lot more real. And that's the kind of thing that makes teams special. I don't care whether you're football, volleyball, basketball, track, any kind of competition like that. It starts from within. It starts in that locker room. It starts with your teammates together, and it starts with you competing against your brother or sister in practice. And that's what I love about this New Orleans Saints team.
Yeah, you gotta love it, man. I heard Kobe say something that was pretty wild, but it goes to his work ethic, right? And he said he will watch a game, even if they won. He will watch a game for 4 hours, going over each play. What could I have done better? What could we have done differently? What could we do? Dissecting it. And we heard this time and time again from Belichick teams, how he dissected plays over and over in the hours of tedious preparation. That's why that New England team is a perennial foe year in and year out to the rest of the NFL football league. There's a reason why they win. And this team has to be just like that. The preparation from a guy like Drew Brees has to be contagious. The preparation from a guy like Cam Jordan has to be contagious. That's what leaders do. Set their squads up to serve an example of how to be a winner, where everyone else is aspiring to be like them or just as better than them. And I always used to tell my people, don't be good as, be better than. Because that's what my dad would tell me every day for 4 years when I was getting out the car, going to high school. Don't be good as, be better than. So for my Saints team and for our listeners, remember, don't be good as, be better than. What can you do to put yourself and prepare yourself to be the best at whatever it is that you do? The end.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Bob, it's been great talking to you, man. Oh, man, this
no
has been
doubt.
A good show.
Can I? Yeah, I just looked at the clock myself. We got carried away, but that's okay. Can I throw something out there a little bit personal before we end?
Definitely, man. Definitely. Go ahead.
As anybody that follows me or us on social media, or even the show, our Bayou Blitz show here, my our West Allegheny tracks team, girls track team, a couple months ago got inducted into the West Allegheny Hall of Fame for outstanding seasons and achievements in 1996 and 1997. I was fortunate, privileged, and blessed to be one of the coaches on that great group of girls. But another one of the coaches and a mentor and one of my best friends, Mr. Mike Quinn, a Hall of Fame coach with that group and a Hall of Fame person. He passed away this Monday morning. Now, I'll be honest, he wasn't necessarily a New Orleans Saints fan. He was a Pittsburgh guy through and through, every sports team. But once I started doing this, and with me being a New Orleans Saints fan, he always followed everything that I did as a person. Sorry. He always followed everything I did as a person, even after we stopped coaching together. And I know he followed our work on our articles on social media. And I promise you, I joke that we have a contingent of the northern New Orleans mafia up here with myself and Lyndon Stevens, Brian Milne. Mr. Mike Quinn was a mentor to me on and off of the track oval, inside and outside of sports. And he will greatly be missed. He meant the world to West Allegheny athletics and to me. And I know that there's a couple of our girls that are listening tonight. He adored you guys as athletes and as people. And I've had, since I posted the news on our Bayou Blitz group and on my personal page on Monday, I have had such an outpouring of support, emotional support, from Saints fans. A lot of us only know each other through social media, and that means the world to me. And I just want to thank you, for that support. And if you could send prayers out to Mike's wife, Jean Quinn, his son Tom, the rest of his family, including a new little grandbaby. Now, the West Allegheny track that he that we're going to hand over to a West Allegheny student every single year. We hope. We're just taking it 1 year at a time. If anybody is interested in donating, a couple cents or a couple dollars, reach out to me on social media and I'll give you the details. But in the meantime, I want to thank you again for your support for me. It wasn't just my loss; it was the world's loss. He was truly a great man. Send prayers out to Gene and Tom Quinn and the rest of his family, and to everybody that he touched so deeply. The world lost a good friend this week.
Yeah, and I know we support you, Bob, and we support the family as well. We'll be praying for you guys. It's never easy to lose someone that you care about, especially someone who has left a mark on your life. All I can tell you, since I've lost two good friends over the past year, is to continue to leave your mark on others' lives as well. And you do that, then you'll be making him proud in the same. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot.
All right, buddy. So you guys be with the family, watch over them, and pray for the family. Even if it doesn't matter if you know them or not, a loss is a loss is a loss. Maybe physically not with us, but spiritually as well as emotionally for the lifetime that we have, that person will continue to be with us. All right, Bob, tell the people how they can follow you on social media.
I can be followed on both Facebook and Twitter. My Facebook is Bob Rose. My Twitter is at BobbyR2613. As most of you know, I write articles through the Canal Street Chronicles. Canal Street Chronicles can also be found on Facebook at Canal Street Chronicles and on Twitter at Saints CSC. Now, I do have a pretty big article. I hope it's a good one coming out tomorrow morning. And then after that, I'm going to take a couple of days off. At least I think I am, to spend some time and give my support to the Quinn family and the West Allegheny community, I hope. But yeah, my pieces can be followed through Canal Street Chronicles or my personal pages that way. And also, Kyle and I have recently started up a Bayou Blitz Facebook group and Facebook page. We are trying to add as many people onto it as what we can. It kind of funnels and mainstreams what we try to do with the show and some select articles through Canal Street Chronicles and the Saints News Network. So if you're not already following, please do. If you have any trouble finding the Bayou Blitz page, reach out to Kyle or myself, and we'll be happy to add you in. If you know of anyone who does like what we're doing or would like what we're doing, by all means, add them as well. I say, Kyle and I say it every week, this is your show as much as it is ours. It gives you a better chance to let us know how you think we're doing, what kind of suggestions you have for us, any input or direction that you would like us to head. Believe you me, both Kyle and myself, we're all ears. So if you're not already following either Kyle Mosley or myself or our Bayou Blitz page, please, we ask you do it. You'd be doing us a favor. Obviously, everything is free. We're all one big family, and it just gives us a better way to support each other.
Definitely. Don't forget, man, if you go to Canal Street Chronicles, Bob and those guys, John and as well as Deuce, you guys put out some good content, but you also can be able to follow some great content here at www.saintsnewsnetwork.com. Barry Hurstis and his crew, they put out some good articles on the daily basis. Matter of fact, Barry popped out 3 today. Wow.
I saw that.
Yeah. I was like, ooh, Barry, you working overtime, my friend. But also go to at Saints News on Twitter, as well as Facebook and as well as Instagram. Don't forget, also, you can follow all of our podcasts on www.saintspodcast.com, and you can also follow more podcasts that's a part of the Who Dat Nation. I host podcasts from our friends around the Who Dat Nation, so we don't discriminate. We're all a part of the Black and Gold, and we support the Black and Gold. So just continue to support us as well as support our writers and podcasters with a donation, if you can. So, Bob, it's been a great night. Be praying for you, your family, your friends' family, and, just hang in there, buddy. That's all I can tell you, man. I know it's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough these next few days and possibly weeks ahead. So just hang in there, hang tough. And if you need to talk, you can always hit me up. All right, Saints fans.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Saints fans, don't forget, you can watch our Black and Gold on Friday night as they face the the Phoenix Cardinals now, right? So you can be able to hang out and watch those guys inside of the Mercedes Superdome on Friday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. All right, man. It's been a good show. And Saints fans, just have a great week, safe week, and who dat, baby? Talk to you later.